The tariff system under the Trump administration keeps evolving. Every time very often it comes up with some new ideas, and it is said that those ideas, the new system of tariffs, new inventions of tariffs, are mostly to secure a better deal for the US interests. So this time, this US comes with a 10% tariff system, also for 12.5% tariff, but for India it is 10%. So this 10% tariff system is on account of forced labor. So what are the basic details of this that we will learn? At this time, this tariff system seeks to prevent forced labor. That is the stated objective of this tariff. We won't be going into much detail that how much tariff is being imposed, which countries are attracting how much tariff, because that kind of stuff is not important. What is important in this particular editorial or news article is understanding the concept of forced labor and tariffs and exports and imports. What are the related connections and why US is imposing tariffs? That needs to be understood. So first thing first, this forced labor concept comes up from the section 301 of something called a Trade Act in US. There is a Trade Act in US, and the section 301 of that Trade Act empowers the US to impose such tariffs that aim at checking forced labor, to prevent forced labor in other countries, partner countries. This section empowers the US government to impose certain tariffs so that the imports in the US can become costly. And such obviously these tariffs can be imposed on certain set of goods which the US feels that these goods may be manufactured, may be built because of the use of forced labor. If US feels that certain goods have been manufactured by use of forced labor, then US can impose more tariffs so that these goods can become costly and in the US. And if these become costly in US, then it expects that the forced labor will go down. That is the overall, you can say, idea or concept behind this forced labor tariff. Now, why it is being imposed on India? Because India does not India does not promote forced labor. India has a very stated decent trade laws over here where forced labor is prevented, forced labor is abolished. So why it is being introduced, why being imposed on India as well? To understand this, you should understand the concept of supply chain. What is the supply chain concept? Understand this way. Consider there is certain India is manufacturing some shirts, clothes. India is manufacturing. These are to be exported to US. But to manufacture these shirts, India is importing some raw materials. Raw materials could be clothes, like basic clothes, textiles, maybe importing some buttons, right? Maybe importing some threads, because India is not a self-sufficient economy. It may be imposing these things from some other countries, and if it is doing so, then there are chances that from whichever country India is importing these, there are chances that those countries may have some components of forced labor left. There are ample chances, right? Like suppose there are some countries in the Southeast Asia or maybe in the Middle East, forced labor maybe, or in Latin American countries, there are chances that forced labor are still being practiced there. And if India is importing those items from such countries, ultimately it means that India is promoting forced labor. even if India is not allowing forced labor within its territory. Now, using these raw materials, what India did, India made shirts, finished goods, and these finished goods are being exported to US, right? So, if the shirts are being manufactured with components having some sort of traces of forced labor, and if these shirts are getting exported to US, then that means that US is also promoting forced labor. So this is called supply chain. Raw material, it is being finally manufactured somewhere else, it is being sold to some other country. So this entire supply chain concept is very important if you want to understand this forced labor tariff idea of the US. So even if India has like legal provisions that prohibit forced labor, there are chances that India is doing trade with other countries where forced labor may still be prevalent. Thus, the so-called 10% tariff that US is imposing on certain goods like textiles or gems and jewelries, apparels exported to US from India. So this is the overall concept of this forced labor tariff of 10%. Now we will move to some other article. This article is related to polity. You must have heard about this what is called anti-defection law. You must have heard about it. So this anti-defection law was actually brought in 1985, and the stated objective was to resolve the issue of defection among the elected leaders. Problem is, this anti-defection law is creating more problems than it is actually solving. Since time inception, though the intended objective was to prevent defection, but still the defection is still continuing and new loopholes are being found out. And this news article actually relates to that. What is the new loophole, and a petition is being filed in the Supreme Court to look after this. Now we should understand this. What is this? It is all about. First, you understand this way, this anti-defection law. So this anti-defection law, it is actually creating more problems than it is solving. So enacted to plug the loopholes. What kind of loopholes? Loopholes of defection. Defection among who? Defection among elected representatives. If someone is not elected representative means someone who is representing a particular political party in the houses like Lok Sabha or like state legislative assemblies. So this anti-defection law is obviously it will apply to elected representatives. If someone is not elected, is not representing the party, a certain particular party in the houses, then it doesn't matter to which side the person is defecting. But if a person has been elected on a particular party symbol, and after getting elected, if he is defecting to other party, that is considered a bad for political system, because you are getting elected on this party, but after getting election for the sake of better perks or ministerial posts, you are just transferring your allegiance to some other party. So that is considered an insult to the mandate given to that particular person or elected representative. So this anti-defection law was enacted to plug the loopholes, but actually new loopholes keep coming up. If you are plugging one loophole, then there are different kinds of interpretations, different meanings, and people are actually able to find out new loopholes, and the defection is still continuing in one shape or the other. Now, what this new loophole that this news article is talking about, this new loophole talks about the merger exception. What is this merger exception? This merger exception pertains to the anti-defection law. It has been provided in the anti-defection law that if 2/3 of the elected representatives jointly seek merger, get merged with other party, if they get merged with other party, then it won't attract disqualification. Let's understand it in easy, simple terms. What are the major key terms over here? The first major key term is that there has to be elected representatives. Elected representatives means elected to some house like Lok Sabha or state legislative assemblies. The elected representatives have to be 2/3 in number. So consider that there are 60 members of Indian National Congress in Lok Sabha, and 2/3 of these members, 2/3 means is 40 members. Out of these 160, out of this 160, 40 members are ready to defect to, they are like choosing, they are getting merged with BJP. For example, I am giving a hypothetical situation. There are 60 members of Indian National Congress in Lok Sabha, and out of those 60 members, 40 have chosen to get merged with BJP. So in this case, there will be no disqualification. What it means? No disqualification means, here disqualification means that they won't lose their seats, won't be lost. They won't lose their seats even if they are changing their political allegiance from the Indian National Congress to BJP. So this is the merger exception. This has been provided in ADL that if 2/3 of the elected representative of a certain particular political party choose to merge with other political party, they will attract no disqualification. If there are less than 2/3, for example, if 1 or 2 members of the elected representative, they are choosing the other political party, then they will attract disqualification. But if the number is 2/3, there will be no disqualification, and they will continue to enjoy their seats in the house. Now, what are the repercussions of this? Like, why this merger exception is becoming a problem now? What are the repercussions? The repercussions are very obvious. The first repercussion is that it can convert a majority party to minority. Suppose a party is having 200 members in like a house and it is holding some majority, but after the election is completed, more than 115 or 100 members are changing their allegiance to some other political party. So the election gave majority to a particular party, but due to defection, that converted into minority. Or take it other way around, a minority party getting converted to majority. So don't you think that if this merger exception practice continues, it will be actually, you can say, the mandate of people is being played with. So this is the overall problem, overall crux of this issue, that if you keep allowing this merger exception, the mandate of the people are being played with just for mere political gains, for ministerial posts. People or elected representatives may change their allegiance, and ultimately the overall objective, or you can say the overall purity or sanctity of elections, will be taken for granted. So this is an emerging topic. With time, as this gets further hearings in the Supreme Court, this will be keep evolving, and in future, not today, in future, near future, you may expect certain regulations or rules or directives or new judgment by the Supreme Court. So these were the two articles. Now we have one more very important article that actually relates to this is something called the economy, Indian economy, and how what is the potential of Indian economy in terms of employment generation, whether people are getting properly getting employed or not. So this we will be learning now. For that, you should understand this way, like there have been protests going on these days very recently. Those protests actually related to some of the concerns of it. What were the concerns of it? What are the concerns of youth in India these days? Can you list it out? First major concern is paper leaks. We are preparing very diligently for some exam, but the paper is getting leaked, exam gets cancelled, and that brings a lot of trauma or additional headache. Then the examination system itself is corrupt. The examination system itself is corrupt. There are frauds, there are cheatings undergoing, there is something called sitting, influential people are buying the seats, and there are lots of other issues. Papers are already getting leaked, and if you have money power, you can if you have influence, you can buy one seat, someone else may appear on your behalf in the actual examination hall, and even if you are not competent enough, you can get selected. These are the two very basic issues because of which the protests have happened. But there are issues other than this being faced by the youth in India. One very important is employment. Employment opportunity. India is a very big economy, big country, and it has a very huge youthful population. But when it comes to giving employment, Indian economy is not able to generate proper employment, and that's why a lot of youth are still being unemployed. They don't have a proper job, they don't have a proper effective sources of income. Related to this is the government exam or government competitive exam and the huge competition over there. Huge competition for securing government jobs. It is said that for one seat, there are nearly 170 applicants applying for a government job in India. Seat is vacancy one, but 170 people are applying. So these two have been vocal. The protesters have been vocal about paper leaks or corrupt examination system, but no one actually talks about these two. These two are also important: the poor employment opportunities and the huge inclination towards government jobs. Why people are more inclined to get government job. So this is something this article highlights, that India's youth compete fiercely for government jobs. What could be the reasons that India's youth compete fiercely for government jobs? Certain data are being provided to which is trying to give you some sort of picture. The reason why the competition is so fierce for the government jobs. We won't be going into the data in much detail, but we should be understanding the underlying issues, underlying concerns. First thing is that even if the government reforms the examination system, even if the government reforms after constituting a committee or after bringing some very stringent law, even if the examination system is reformed, the deep-rooted elements will not be fixed. what is important is to fix there to resolve the deep rooted elements that are actually hampering the potential of youth in India. Now, what are these deep rooted elements? What are these deep rooted concerns? The first one is education and employment mismatch. There is a mismatch between education and employment. What does this mismatch mean? What it actually means? What is the meaning of mismatch in education and employment? Consider this way. People are getting educated in the traditional system, traditional courses. People are huge amount of children, a huge number of students are actually pursuing courses like simple graduation in arts, commerce, or science, or they are also like pursuing courses like normal engineering. There are lots of engineering colleges, lots of medical colleges, and they are pursuing such courses. And these traditional courses do not guarantee employment. Employment is not guaranteed after pursuing such courses. Why not guaranteed? Because the industry linked skills are not prevalent, not available. Just like studying the same engineering, and the industry has evolved a lot in terms of AI, automation, robotics, nanotechnology, but most of the engineering colleges in India are like running the same old courses, and the industry and market has evolved. Skills are not being imparted, and because of this, employment is not getting generated. So traditional courses, employment not getting generated. Why so? Because industry skilled links are not being imparted. Then another main issue is that people, if they have studied higher, I mean here in terms of traditional courses. If they have studied higher, then they are having some high aspirations. You cannot expect, in general parlance I am saying, you cannot expect a graduate from a village in India to do some manual jobs, because he or she will feel that he is a graduate and no one else is graduate. Very few people are, no one else is graduate in the village. So why he should be doing manual jobs? So after people gain some higher studies, they also get some higher aspirations, but those aspirations do not give them a job. They don't get a job because the aspiration after doing graduation is to get some 40 or 50,000 per month job, but the market is providing only 20,000 jobs. So those people prefer to stay at home because their aspirations are not matching up the job requirement, what the job is providing. Then another important concern that is being highlighted is the expenditure. Or one more thing that you can connect over here is that those people who have like studied lower, for example, if someone is only 10th pass or 8th pass or 12th pass, they are like easily pursuing jobs. They can do informal sector jobs, they can work as casual laborers. So this is something which is highlighted over here, is that educated youth, graduates face highest employment rate. This is very important, which is being highlighted in this article, that if someone is graduate, there are chances that he will face more unemployment in comparison to someone who has studied less than below graduation. So this is also one of the concerns being highlighted. The fourth one over here is the expenditure on education and health is very meager in India. How so it is meager? So it says here that education, the expenditure on education, India spends only 2.7% of its GDP in education, while the national target is 6%. So expenditure on education presently is nearly 2.7% of India's GDP, while the target is 6%. So if India's GDP is 100 rupees, then only 2 rupees 70 paise is getting spent on education, while the target is 6 rupees. On health, it says that India spends nearly only 1.9%, while the target is 2.5. Health 1.9% of GDP, while the target is 2.5% as per the National Education Policy. So because of this low expenditure on education and health, that is also being connected to the poor employability of the education system in India. Because even if we are spending in terms of spending for the sake of education, we are mostly opening up some basic schools or some regular colleges. And those colleges, those schools do not have enough potential to generate effective or sustainable employment for the youth. So these are the four major concerns, four major underlying issues that have been highlighted, and all these have been highlighted in this article. So if you look at this article, very few people actually skip such articles, that okay, this is not important, but these articles are actually important. Another related article to this is this on the same page, and this article is an editorial kind of written by Arun Mehra, and this article is it talks in terms of the more or less the same thing that we discussed now. It talks about employment elasticity. It says what is employment elasticity? So it says that employment elasticity is the amount of meaningful employment created with each unit of GDP growth. So how much amount of employment is being created as the GDP increases, that is called elasticity of employment. That means if the GDP is growing, for example, suppose GDP was 100 rupees 10 years ago, now the GDP is 200 rupees after 10 years. So there is an increase of 100%. Right, the GDP has doubled. Has the employment generation also doubled that way? If it has doubled, then it will be said that Indian economy is very elastic. Employment per se, it is elastic. This article says that Indian economy is not like that. India has been a laggard in generating employment. Even if the Indian economy is growing, we are not able to create enough employment opportunities for the youth. So ultimately, what we are doing, there must be some issues related to how we are spending our taxes, how we are curating the courses, what kind of courses should be curated for the youth, what kind of education we should provide the youth. Then only the concerns of the youth can be resolved, and merely reforming the examination system won't work.